Good evening, this is the Northern Sun Experience. I'm David Brown in Frisco, Texas, where the Augustana men's basketball team has just won the Division II National Championship for the first time in school history. It was a wild, emotional journey, and it culminated with a 9-point win over Lincoln Memorial in the title game. But before we get to the championship, let's take a look back at how they got here.
At the Elite Eight, all the teams are reseeded. Augustana was dubbed the 2 seed, which meant they took on the 7-team Tarleton State out of Stephenville, Texas, just 2 hours away from Frisco. But in addition to a road atmosphere, the Vikings had to deal with another distraction, a left foot injury to Player of the Year Dan Jansen that forced him to miss the first game of his entire career. Early on, some other Vikings stepping up. Alex Richter, in his usual sweet spot, hits the corner 3 to give Augie a 10-9 lead. But Tarleton State's style would cause problems for the Vikings. Charles Hill finds Ramon Jenkins on the back cut for the alley-oop, Texans back on top. Later in the half, Tarleton State would show its outside prowess. Chance Chambers with a 3 from the left elbow. He led the Texans with 11 in the first half, and Tarleton State's up 8 at halftime. Second half, the high-flying Texan act would continue. Michael Harge to Hill, back to Harge for the throwdown. He led Tarleton State with 26. A few minutes later, the inside-outside game goes back out. E.J. Reed for 3. Texans lead by 10 with 15 minutes to go. But Augustana would slowly chip away at the double-digit deficit, led by Richter driving in for the left-handed layup in traffic. And then with just over a minute remaining and the Vikings up 3, Richter nails a clutch three-pointer to double the lead to 6. He had a career-high 32 points in Jansen's absence, and Augustana survives without their all-time leading scorer, 86-79, to advance to the Final Four. Coach Billeter said one of the turning points came when he addressed his team at halftime.
We played a lot of games this year, and we believe in what we're doing. We reinforced what we were doing, and we made it really clear that at least these two guys right here, they got 20 minutes left in their career if we don't make up 8 points somehow. And that was brought up, and they sure responded extremely well.
We've had way too good of a year, and we've put way too much into this to let a 10-point deficit with 15 minutes or whatever we had left to pack it up and go home. And we care way too much about this team, and I care way too much about all those guys to not get a win there.
So the Vikings advanced to the Final Four, where they took on number 3 Western Oregon. Once again, the question was whether Jansen would be able to play. He didn't start. Zach Huskin took his place once again, but just 2 minutes in, he came off the bench to a standing ovation, and hyperbole aside, provided a Willis Reed-like moment. First, he hits his very first shot, a short floater in the lane, and then on the very next possession, Jansen pulls up on the right side, nails the 3, 5 quick points for the senior, and he lets out a giant roar at the other end of the court. A few possessions later, Jansen works the pick and pop, his bread and butter all year long, for another 3. He scores 8 straight points on 3 straight made field goals, and Augie ties the game at 10. And they would cruise past the Wolves from there. Alex Richter gets the rebound, finds Adam Byer. Nice bounce back to Richter for the wide open layup. And then it's Jansen hitting yet another 3. He had 13 points in the first half, returning from injury. And the Vikings cruise past the Wolves 74-55 to advance to the national championship.
Since day one, and Coach even mentioned in the locker room, our goal wasn't to make it to the national championship. You know, we're trying to finish something here. We're trying to make history. So Saturday's just going to be a game where, hey, you give it everything you got. You know, I'm going to hopefully I walk off with a good foot, but if I walk off with a dragon, I'll take it.
So the emotion of not having Jansen and the emotion of getting him back propel Augie to the title game, where they would face Lincoln Memorial University out of Tennessee. The Rail Splitters, the highest scoring team in the nation, and they show why early. Nice bounce from Laquan Choice to Dorian Pinson for the layup, but Augie's big 3 would be able to keep up as Alex Richter gets his own layup inside. Just seconds later, he led the Vikings with 26. Just before halftime, Casey Schilling gets the feed and nails the mid-range jumper at the buzzer. Augie takes a 43-38 lead into the break. Second half, Rail Splitters would get close, but the Vikings would never relinquish the lead. Schilling with a nice up and under. He had 20 points and 19 rebounds. On the defensive end, Augie would continue to be aggressive. Dan Jansen diving on the floor and feeding it to Jordan Spencer, who takes it the rest of the way. The lead would increase for Augie to double digits. Lincoln Memorial would cut things down to 5, but Richter sets up in the right corner. He's been deadly from there all season long, makes the lead 8 once again. And while the big 3 provided their usual stat line, you knew things were going well on this possession. Shot clock running down on a broken play, and Adam Byer swishes the fall away from the baseline. Rail Splitters couldn't connect on any threes at the other end, and the celebration was on. The Augustana Vikings, your 2015-2016 national champions, they notch a 90-81 win over Lincoln Memorial. It's the first basketball national championship in school history and the first men's basketball championship by any South Dakota team since the South Dakota State Jackrabbits won it all in Division II in 1963. An unbelievable run, an unbelievable ride, and we heard from the entire starting five after the game.
We all just bought in. You know, next man up. We just did everything that we needed to do to win this weekend.
Feels amazing. I'm so proud of this team. Everybody on this team stepped up. We needed everyone. With the whole Dan injury and everything, we needed everybody, and everybody came through when we needed them.
It hurt. You know, never missed a game in my career, and all of a sudden I missed one of the most important ones of my career. And, you know, I just felt like I let the team down. And that was the biggest thing. I just felt heartbroken. Why did this happen now? But God is great. My trainers and my doctors are great, and they got me feeling better, and I was able to finish the season.
I mean, this team's resilient, too. We're not one guy. We're a big team. The team's great. It was awesome to get him another chance and then to get all the seniors this national championship.
Towards the end of the season, you really start appreciating them more, you know, because you realize we ain't going to have those guys next year. And, you know, what a way to give it to them, you know. Their whole time, it was just for them. They've done a great job in passing the torch to us, and I'm just so happy for them. I'm really happy for them.
When we come back on the Northern Sun Experience, I'll magically transport myself back to our Sioux Falls studio and sit down with former Augustana point guard and very proud alum Jordan Dalton as he breaks down Augie's run to the title.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience, run by former Augustana point guard and very proud alum Jordan Dalton to break things down. All right, you're an analyst. You try and be objective. You critique when necessary, praise when warranted, but I think everyone's going to understand. How happy are you right now?
Absolutely. Just grinning from ear to ear. Just so excited and ecstatic for the entire Augustana community. Number one, you have to give, obviously, a ton of praise to the players. You know, it's a lot of admiration for those guys to go through that process every single day and prepare themselves or put themselves in a position to win a national championship. You know, we were lucky enough to see it 36 times when they came out and played, but the amount of dedication and sacrifice and hard work you have to put in the times when nobody's watching, that's what I more admire, is every single member of that team came to work every single day. And just extremely, extremely excited for those guys. And then obviously, like I said, personal connection with Coach Billeter, and just everything he's gone through with the Augustana program. You know, when he showed up 13 years ago, they won 6 games their first year. You couldn't maybe even get a sniff from any top high school prospect in the area. And so to see him on Saturday afternoon, cutting down the nets, surrounded by his national champion team with 2 All-Americans on the court, you're just extremely, extremely excited for a guy that saw a vision of how he wanted the program to be. And I thought Saturday afternoon was just the culmination and the peak of all that hard work that himself and his entire coaching staff put in. And then not to mention the fans. You know, I talked to one young lady who said she had been coming to games since 1958. You know what I mean? Exactly. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you feel so appreciative. I think the following that Augie has is very unique in the fact that it's a very loyal following. So just super excited for everybody all around, and definitely a great day to be a Viking.
Well, in order to get to Saturday afternoon, we have to start from the beginning. You were down in Frisco. You saw all the games from the stands, so we'll start with the Elite Eight game against Tarleton State. That was on Wednesday. Dan Jansen hurts his foot in practice on Tuesday, the day before. He warmed up, but he couldn't go. So from an emotional perspective only, your captain, your Division II Player of the Year, your all-time leading scorer misses his first game of his entire career when you need him the most. Right. How emotional was that?
Yeah, I thought Augie could go one of 2 ways. You know, they can kind of feel sorry for themselves and pout and come out there very lackluster and just kind of cave in, or that could bond them together as a team, and they could even amplify their intensity and their effort. And I thought obviously they did the latter. You know, you talk to some of the guys after the game, and they said they wanted to win that one for Dan Jansen. Like you said, the kid just gets named the 2 Player of the Year, and it's the first game he's missed in 4 years. And so your heart just goes out to him, and it seemed like that really rallied the guys. They wanted to go out there and make sure that wasn't the way Jansen's career was going to end. And so I thought when you watched that game, their intensity and their focus on the defensive end was honestly some of the best defense I've seen them play all year. You know, they were great on their backside rotations. They were able to cut off penetration, and they just showed a tremendous amount of grit and effort to win that game. You know, that wasn't a pretty game. They were down virtually the entire game up until about the last 4 minutes of the game, but they just found a way to get stops. You know, they got stops consistently. And then obviously you look at a kid like Al Richter, completely carried him on the offensive end. You know, he was able to get 32 points, make 15 free throws, which was really able to extend that lead or keep that lead in the last 4 minutes. So just a phenomenal job all the way around.
You sort of mentioned it was a bit sluggish at first. You could tell that the absence of Jansen was hurting, and as you said, the Texans led most of that game. They were up 10 with 15 minutes to go. So when you're in that situation, how is Augustana able to fight back from being down double digits, season on their line, and pull it out?
Yeah, I thought they, like I said, they just had a tremendous amount of focus. You know, they came out there with the energy and the intensity that they were going to win that game, and they were able to keep the game in arm's length the entire time. But I thought what really prevailed was their ability to get to the free throw line. You know, they played extremely aggressive, was able to get to the free throw line. I think they made 26 free throws in the second half alone. And so that was just a true testament to their aggressiveness and intensity on the offensive end as well, as far as, hey, we're going to put our head down, we're going to get to the basket. Like I said, not necessarily the flow they're used to having on the offensive end, but they were able to get to the line and knock free throws down as well. Like I said, they made 26 free throws in the second half. Tarleton only attempted 12 free throws in the entire second half. And so it was just their commitment and their tenacity on both ends of the court that I really thought allowed them to prevail against a very, very tough Texan team.
Yeah, that team was only 2 hours away from Frisco, so they had a lot of fans there as well. So the Vikings do move on. They advance to the Final Four to take on Western Oregon. Jansen, questionable going into the game, doesn't start, but 2 minutes in, comes off the bench, hits 3 straight shots, kind of has his Willis Reed moment. So from the emotion of not having him the previous game, how emotional was it to have him back for that Western Oregon game?
Absolutely. Well, you were just so excited for the big fella. Like I said, after missing his first game in 4 years, you're just excited to see him on the court. And when he stepped on the court, obviously, entire arena erupted, at least the ones wearing Augustana blue, you know, went crazy. And then he showed very quickly, not only was he out there, but he was going to be a factor. You know, he knocked down back-to-back jumpers, including one three-pointer, and that forced Western Oregon to call a timeout. And everyone on that bench, players, managers, coaches, training staff, everyone absolutely erupted to see that kid and Dan Jansen let out a huge yell after making that three-pointer. You could just tell from the start of that game and from the moment he stepped on the court, there was no way Augie was losing that game. I thought the emotional lift that he provided was just extremely, extremely huge, and Augie felt like they were whole again. And like I said, you're just happy to see the big fella go out there and be able to contribute to his team, you know, that he helped obviously propel to this national stage.
In addition to the emotional lift, Augustana holds Western Oregon to just 55 points. That's their lowest output they've given up the entire season. So then they move on to the national championship game. That's against Lincoln Memorial, the Rail Splitters out of Tennessee. They average 97 points per game. Augie holds them to just 81. So defensively, how are they able to keep the highest scoring team in Division II in check?
Yeah, I thought, number one, they set the tone from the get-go. They held Lincoln Memorial to just 2 buckets in the first 5 minutes of the game. And so they did that by simply being aggressive on the defensive end. Like I said, they had some of the best rotations on help side defense rotations that I've seen them have all year. You know, they weren't able to completely shut them down, but shut down Lincoln Memorial, but what they did, they just made shots tough. You know, so if they're in the paint, maybe they have to contort a shot. Maybe they have a hand in their face on jump shots. Maybe they're just not as comfortable, you know, as they're used to being on the offensive end. And like I said, just speaks to a testament of the intensity that Augie came out with from the get-go. And I thought they did a great job of just getting back in transition. You know, Lincoln Memorial had some great athletes who could really get out and get some easy buckets. But in that game, Augie only gave up 13 fast break points. And so they just made the Rail Splitters play in the half-court setting and really work for every bucket they have. And when you're playing against such a potent offensive team, you don't want to give them anything easy. And I thought Augie did a great job of that.
Well, they did a good job defensively holding down their offense, but in the national championship game, you look at the trio of Al Richter, Casey Schilling, and Dan Jansen, and you look at their stat lines. Jansen, 25-9, Schilling, 20-19, Richter, 26-6. These are the 3 best players on your team, and all of them step up in the biggest game of their lives. How do you explain that?
Yeah, I explain that as 3 guys who want to leave a legacy at Augustana. They want to leave a championship legacy, and I give huge props to Alex Richter from the get-go of stepping up. I think he had 8 or 10 of Augie's first 13 points. And Augie's used to seeing, Augie fans are used to seeing him running that corner, that right corner, 3-point line and knock down shots. And so he did that great, but he also put his head down, got to the basket. He was aggressive. He just had a look in his eye, and he was not going to allow his team to lose. And obviously that's why he ended up getting the Elite Eight MVP, because he played with that sense of urgency the entire game. And I thought the rest of the team fed off of that. You know, there were times in the second half where Dan Jansen looked like the old Dan Jansen. You know, he scored 9 out of the Vikings' 12 points with about 9 minutes to go in the second half. There was a stretch there where he was on the left block and just couldn't be stopped. And then with all that being said, if you look or if you ask anybody who's in that arena, if you ask who's the most important player on the court, I guarantee you 99% of people will say Casey Shilling. You know, the kid just works his butt off every single second he's on the court, and he affects the game on both ends. He was doing a great job of being disruptive on the defensive end, and he also did such a great job on the offensive end as well. I mean, the kid grabbed every rebound that was in his vicinity. You know, almost comes out with a 20-point, 20-rebound game in the national championship game on the biggest stage of his life. And so just kudos to those 3 guys of really setting the tone and coming out and doing everything they can to hang a banner up in Augustana that's going to be there for a very, very long time. And it just, you couldn't ask for a better way for those 3 guys' career to end.
Well, Augustana is your Division II national champion, and what a better way to end our basketball season with analysis from you. You've been great all season long. Thanks again for providing your knowledge.
It. Thanks a lot, pal. It's been great. I appreciate you and Toby and everybody on the staff here that helps out. It's been a blast.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jordan Dalton. When we come back, the winning head coach Tom Billeter is going to be in studio with a very special guest, the championship trophy, to discuss winning it all.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midcoast Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience, joined by the head coach of the national champion Augustana Vikings, Mr. Tom Billeter. Coach, how does it feel to have this trophy right here?
Well, you know, I think the trophy is great. I still, like I was telling you earlier, I don't know if you believe it or not, it hasn't really even soaked in yet, or it'll sink eventually, I guess. But right now, I was just relieved. You know, we had so many people down there that had all made it very clear to me how much money they had spent to be there. I was just happy to keep them down there for as many days as we could and let them have their spring break or whatever was involved. So, but you know, I was just so proud of our team, and it's a great group of kids with tremendous senior leadership, and just I have, you know, the best staff in America, from administration, my assistant coaches, and just key people that are involved in so many ways. So, you know, very, very happy and very blessed to be sitting here with this between us.
Sounds good. Well, let's get down there. You have momentum from the conference tournament. You beat Northwest Missouri State, so you have a little bit of momentum going to the Elite Eight. And then Dan hurts his foot in practice the day before. How glum was your team after he hurt his foot?
It was terrible. First of all, Northwest is as good a team as we played. They're very good. You get down there, we don't change for anything. You know, we actually were going to do an 8-minute scrimmage. Dan goes up for a rebound. There's nobody within 30 feet of him. He's done it a million times. He's never missed a game in 4 years. He comes down funny, and he goes down hard. And at first I thought there's no way, because there was no, he didn't roll it, he didn't do anything. I said, he'll bounce up. And he kept saying it, never bounced up. So it was emotional. He's all worried, and we go to the free throw line. It's all I could think of. Let's go shoot free throws. We missed 20 free throws in a row. Our guys couldn't make a free throw. And I'm not making it up. And so it was just a mess. And so we get him out of there. Long story short, you know, we were fortunate. Sanford sent, you know, we're a Sanford program. They sent their docs in. They did a phenomenal job. We got it x-rayed. Dallas people were super. Nothing that could make it worse. It was more ligament type. And one thing led to another, and we thought we got a chance. And then it's 12 minutes before our first Elite Eight game against Tarleton. I'm hoping he's in there even at 50%. It's 5 more fouls to give, and get told at the 12-minute mark he can't play. You know what? That's a tough pitch to hit, and I can't hit a curveball. You know, so that wasn't too good. And so maybe it was best we didn't know, because what can you say about Al Richter getting 32, Casey Shilling being who he was the whole tournament, Zach Huskin steps in with 13 and 8, and Adam and Jordan, John Warren, just phenomenal. So it might have been better we didn't know.
So he misses his first game of his entire career. Obviously, you mentioned how difficult that was. And then the game itself, obviously a little sluggish. You're down 8 at halftime. Didn't really get a firm grasp until the last 5 minutes, I would say. How did you pull it out?
And, you know, Dave, we were happy to be down 8 at the half because we didn't feel like we played well. We left a lot of points on the floor. And they're good. They're really good. And as you and I were talking, they have 7, 8 transfers, 3 Division I transfers. It's a very good team and really athletic and a great defensive team. And so to go in down 8, we were feeling okay. You know, we thought, you know, just get it within 6 with 5 to go. We thought we had a chance. And then we get down 10 in the second half. You know, it really never even sunk yet. It was that time in the second half, I don't even really remember. We just kept doing what we do, and we just had to keep playing. And, you know, we started, you know, Al hit some shots, and things started going our way, and Casey just getting every rebound in the entire weekend, and we started getting stops defensively, and then we got on a roll. And to think that team averages, they give up 62 points a game. Tarleton State doesn't. We scored 57 in the second half without Dan. I'd like to see really any team in the country lose their player of the year. He's the NABC National Player of the Year. Doesn't even play in the first Elite 8 game, and to have Al Richter step up with 32 and everybody else I already mentioned, Zach and Casey, Adam, it was unbelievable. That was one of the most incredible victories I've ever been a part in 31 years of coaching.
So you lose, as you said, Player of the Year, your all-time leading scorer. You have to fight off all those big fans because that school's only 2 hours away from Frisco.
That's about
it was a hostile crowd.
Another
too.
great point. I mean, they're not even 2 hours; they're 100 miles away, and they brought everybody. I mean, they had their band, their cheerleaders. They brought, you know, every mother, father, brother, sister. I mean, it was a very well attended game by Tarleton State, and it was a home game for them. An area they've played before. They knew the area. It was a great advantage for them. So even getting the draw, and we never even knew Dan would get hurt. I didn't like the draw to begin with because of that, and then to not have Dan, you know, again, it was kind of a miracle, to be honest. We were very fortunate to win that game.
So you move on to Western Oregon. Jansen again's testing it out in warm-ups. He doesn't start. You start Zach Houston again. You're down 8 too early, but then he comes off the bench. How did sort of the process go in terms of figuring out he could play?
First of all, it's a Willis Reed moment, but nobody knows who Willis Reed is. All right, so I'm really dating myself.
I tweeted it was a Willis Reed moment.
I told my team that, and they're like, "Who?" You know, they had no clue who Willis Reed was. But you know, he comes off the bench, and just the way to score that many. You know, what do you have? I can't remember. 8 points in
they hit his first
5
3
minutes,
shots,
and it was magical. And it just pumped up the team, and it helped and from that point, we just took off. You know, we are a close-knit group. You know, it's funny, I was killing myself. Why did I scrimmage, you know, the day before in the Elite 8? Chad Hederman played for me, was my GA, and has been my assistant. He's been with me 11 of my 13 years. He goes, "Coach, I've been with you 11 years. You've never changed a practice that I've known you. You did exactly what you do before every single game." You know, so I was beating myself up. It was just something to see him come in and give us that lift, and boy, did our team rally from there. Because really in the second half, he was hurt. He couldn't play in the second half, but we only needed him for the first half. And people don't realize, Western Oregon beat Oregon State. You know, they were tied this year in a real game with Oregon with like 10 minutes to go in the game. They were tied with the University of Oregon, who just went to Elite 8. They have a Player of the Year candidate themselves that we held 2 points. I mean, I know people were like, well, gosh, they just didn't play very well. That's a really good basketball team. They made the Final Four. They're 3rd in the nation. I think our guys really played well. You know, they just weren't used to big kids like we have, and we were able to guard them.
Yeah, aside from all the Jansen stuff, you hold them to 55 points. That's the fewest you've given up the entire season. And
I thought, to be honest, we scored 74, and we left 20 points on the floor of that game, you know, and without Dan. So, again, you know, and Jim Shaw does a great job. I mean, all the firsts for that program, I mean, they'd never even, I don't even know if they'd ever won an NCAA tournament game, and then to get past the regional and then to get to the Final Four. They just had an outstanding year, and their coach, he was at the University of Oklahoma when I was at Texas A&M. We were in the same, both in the Big 12 back then, and I have great respect for he and their program, but I really thought we played well, and you know, that was a game that we, you know, really needed Dan. Dan came in and just gave us a lift, and then the rest of the guys just went from there.
All right, well, you advance to the championship game. When we come back, part 2 of my interview with Coach Billeter, discussing that game against Lincoln Memorial and the emotion of winning it all.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midcoast Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Once again, joined by the head coach of the national champion Augustana Vikings, Tom Billeter. So you're still laughing when I say national champion.
Kind of funny, you know. That'll never get old. That's what, you know, everybody's saying or whatever. And every time I hear it, it's kind of funny, you know, because it just hasn't.
hit, they will eventually.
All right, we discussed the Elite Eight game, the Final Four game. Then you get to the championship against Lincoln Memorial. It's a school out of Tennessee. They average 97 points a game, and you hold them to 81. Their third lowest total of the season. Yeah. How much of a defensive effort did your guys give? How great was their defensive effort?
Such an athletic team. 3 guards averaging over 17 points a game, and just an incredibly athletic front line. You know, they have a call. They rub their tie. You know what it is? Dribble to the lane and throw it up to the rim and just go dunk it. That's their play, and they're good at it. You know, and we had kind of fun. We got to watch them play both their games. I thought they played very, very well. I thought Barry, for an 8th seed, was incredibly good. You know, all 8 teams are good, but you know, that's their first game, and to beat Barry the way they did, 94-76, I was like, holy cow. And then they come back and beat a very good West Liberty team in a great game with a great player in Seager Bonifant. And so you're sitting there going, this team's for real. They're really good. And then we watched all their tapes, and you just keep getting just nervous, and they're so athletic, and they can shoot it. So, you know, they're very much like Tarleton, but they could really shoot it. However, having said that, we guarded and held Tarleton to 16 three-pointers, you know, so they shot the heck out of it that night when they played us. Tough game for us to prepare for. On the flip side, we also were watching them going, how are they going to guard us inside? And we were feeling better about having Dan, you know, and again, that medical team, Doc Boyens, Doc Kimber just did such a great time, and then my trainer, Jason Rinney's just MVP. But, you know, those guys did such a good job that we were pretty confident we'd have Dan at about 65%. And we thought if we can have Dan at 65 or 70, that's all we need, you know, that will really help us. And that's what happened. And I think they really struggled to get us inside, and whenever they tried to overcorrect with that, then you had Al Richter just playing a tournament of his life, and he's hitting threes, he's getting to the rim. Adam Byer, Jordan Spencer, and again, Zach came in with a big shot, and John Warren defensively. That's our 7 that really, you know, kind of led the charge, and really thought that going into the game was hoping we'd have Dan. I didn't think he'd get 25 points.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've probably seen the stat line, but your big 3, Jansen, Schilling, Richter. Jansen had 25 and 9, Schilling had 20 and 19, Al Richter had 26 and 6. You've developed these big 3 over the past 4 to 5 years, and in the last game of their college career, they all put up the numbers that everyone expects them to.
Yeah, it was, you know, it's such a great group, and to think, you know, we were talking earlier, some people are saying they can't remember a team ever being to the Elite Eight without a transfer, let alone to win a championship. We don't have a transfer on our roster, so you're right, these guys have been with us for 4 and then Al for 5 due to his injury. But I also thought that it really built such a fellowship for life. You know, these guys are so tight, and they just weren't going to let each other down. And when somebody goes and makes a play, everyone there is for them and has their back. If you make a mistake, they're picking each other up. And, you know, those 3 got all the attention, but that backcourt of Byer and Jordan Spencer was pretty salty and pretty solid too. So obviously it takes an entire team, but those 3 seniors couldn't have gone out on a better, higher note. I was so happy that Al was the MVP, because you had Casey MVP of the regional. Dan's won every award, very deserving, and then to get Al an award like that, who deserves it. And you know, it was just one of those. I was just so happy for all 3 of those guys. And Tanner Odegaard never gets mentioned, you know, our 4th senior, but man, is he a piece of the puzzle too, and those guys are all very, very close. So a great group. I'll be crying real tears at the senior banquet, but between now and then, it's a good feeling, and very proud and happy of our entire team and of those seniors.
All right, so let's go back a year ago. You lose in the 2nd round to Northwest Missouri State after you had a great year, but everyone knew your entire team was going to come back. At the same time, though, that kind of brings the expectation that, hey, if everyone's back and they had such a great year, you should win it all. So now that you've actually done it, what was the pressure like during the season?
I love our community because so many people care. I tell Division I coaches, we have 2,000 season ticket holders, and they're just shaking their head. They can't believe that. Disadvantage, when you lose to Northwest Missouri, 2,000 people are telling you, how'd you lose that game? You stink, you know, and it kind of drove us. It was all right. It was deserved. It was a shot well deserved. I still think Northwest was pretty good, but we should have won. And that was such a driving force. And then, you know, you beat Iowa. So now, and they're on the, you know, there are people on the announcing and are saying, oh, this team will win a national championship. You don't need to be hearing that November 7th. Right. You know, played them November 6th. So you know what happens? You go out, lose to Washburn, first game of the year. Couldn't have been at the time, but couldn't have been a better thing to have happen. Well, we're cooking along. We've won 19, 20 in a row. Got a big weekend, Morehead State. Oh, got to get tickets. It's sold out. Kind of forgot we're playing a team called Northern in between that, who had lost to us in overtime the year before with basically the same team. They had 6,000 there on their hate winter night. They beat us, played a great game. So all of a sudden now we get their attention again. We go and beat a really good Morehead team, as good as anybody we played, and beat them at their place. It's funny how this season has worked out. But right when we were feeling so great, and I always tell our team, when you're at your highest, you have that's your furthest fall. And every time we were getting a little cocky, which we aren't good at and don't handle well, we got knocked right back. And that's just how that tournament went. That's just how this season has been, and that's just why it's such a special group. the things we've overcome this year and the pressures all year, and then that Wednesday game against Tarleton. I mean, it's just amazing that we're sitting here today having this conversation.
You mentioned that. Looking back, obviously, you don't need any extra motivation. You're in the Elite Eight. But did that injury almost galvanize the team in a whole new way?
Looking back on it, absolutely. And the way it was handled was just pure luck because we didn't know. I think had we worked on it for 24 hours, we'd overcoached, we'd been playing more of this or that. We just reacted, and then to have Zach to step in and get us 13-8. I mean, it was a knee-jerk reaction to a situation we really kind of thought could sort of happen, but we thought we'd still get minutes. You know, it was just something else. And that, again, 20 years from now, that'll be talked about because I'm telling you, that's how stories are made. And it was almost made for TV. It was unbelievable. And yeah, I tell you, David, it was just something that everybody just stepped up and had to.
You mentioned lastly how you were trying not to think of coaching this team one last time, but now that you know the memory is good, can you reflect back on just how special this group's been?
You're so proud of them, and you want them to go on and have lives. And they're going to be such great people in their community. These are really good. They're all graduating. I mean, in 4 years, and Al graduated last year. He's already got a job waiting for him. And if they want, they're going to go on and play some more basketball, and I think they will. If they don't, they're still going to have great lives. But it's a group that we'll remain close. I know they'll remain a part of this program. And then having Levi Jansen come in, Dan's younger brother, who's going to be a great player. I always say the most fun thing is going to be do the Jansens or Schillings score the most points because Levi's going to be in there for a couple thousand, in my opinion, too. But, it's just that'll keep that part of their family as a part of our program. But the Schillings, I'm just so upset that Carl and Clayton didn't have another boy. They really needed one more after Casey because I sure would have loved to have had him. And the grandchildren are a little too young. So, but it's just a great group and a special group, and been honored and blessed to coach them, to be quite honest. And I've never had a group of seniors walk out where at least one of them, it's kind of like, hey, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Not this group, man. I'd say, and you always love your kids, but they're sick of you. It's time they're going to go. Not this group. I would keep them forever, but they're going to be very successful.
All right, Coach. Thanks a lot for your time. Congrats on being national champions.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, David. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, when we come back, one last look at Augustana's run to a national championship.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midcoast Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back. We're taking a one-week break, but we will return on Wednesday, April 13th with a brand new Northern Sun Experience. For now, though, here's one last look at the sights and sounds of the national champion Augustana Vikings.
40 minutes is everything you got. We're not ending number 2, we're ending number 1. And then we're going to be hanging up in the rafters for the rest of history. Who has the biggest heart? 1, 2, 3.
Dan's given us so much now. This is our turn to give him something back.
We had a lot of emotion